All right, guys, welcome back. It is time for another episode of Between the Watts. This week, we're going to be covering Justin's upcoming trip to China. We're going to do some tips on how to extend the life of your e-bike battery. Plus, we'll do a deep dive on some existing e-bike laws and answering your questions from the comments section. All right, Justin, just kick it off with what we got going on here at EBR and your upcoming trip.
Yeah, so a lot of cool stuff. As we mentioned last week, we have several bike launches coming out. So pay attention over the next couple weeks. Don't have a ton of details I can share yet, but we got some cool stuff coming.
Nice.
One bike that is launching, but everybody knows about already because they announced the Sea Otter, the Aventon Adventure. We got that started in testing today. So we got out in the hill test, did really well. Stay tuned for those results. And probably the thing that I'm most excited about is I'll be flying to China the end of next week to cover China Cycle. So China Cycle is a yearly bicycle expo that they've been doing for 33 years. And so they wanted some US media coverage. They invited us to come cover the event. There's gonna be 1,600 different booths there.
Dang.
So I'm excited to see what's going on. Excited to get just the temperature in China with all the tariffs and everything. So that'll be super cool. After that event, we're actually going to be doing some factory tours. So we're going to go to Dahon. We're going to go to Ananda. We're going to go to Filion, which is a large battery manufacturer. And so lots of cool stuff coming up. Pay attention. We're going to be putting out some videos, some written kind of updates of what we're seeing. And I think bottom line also, a lot of good Chinese food.
I would say bring some takeout back, but I don't know if it's going to hold on the plane and all that.
Maybe some fortune cookies, but I think those are actually not Chinese. Anyways, I got a lot to learn.
Starting with
I don't know how to say water, don't know how to say coffee, don't know how to say anything there. So,
but you know how to ride a bike, and that's step one.
Yes. So I'm gonna hit Duolingo, and I'll be back in a couple weeks to report.
Nice. All right, guys. So we have proudly sponsored with Pedro's Tools. As you can see, they have not only supplied our wall behind us with their tools, and we use them all the time to put together these bikes and maintain them, and we really like them. But as a sponsor of the show, I at least wanted to share them with you guys and some of the tools that I really like using. Specifically, today we had this incident with a torque wrench, and that's where things like this come in really, really handy. This is their Demi torque wrench, and it does a slow level torque wrench. So from 3 pounds up to 15. And when you're doing things like stem bolts and headsets that have 6 Newton meters, 9 Newton meters, you need a torque wrench that can give you that feedback so you know when you've actually secured it. But oftentimes, the big torque wrenches at your local Home Depot are really rated for much higher rated torque settings. So something that's bike related like this is super nice. And that's what Pedro's really does well. They have all the tools you're going to need that are specialty tools for working on your bike. So if you guys want to check out that stuff, I will leave a link down in the description. All right, guys. So this week's e-bike tip of the week is going to be related to your battery. And specifically, it's going to be when you can, try to only charge your battery to 80%. And there's some reasons behind that. So first off, all batteries have their own unique charge cycles. That's a number of times they can be charged to 100%. It's a set number of times that the battery is considered good for. Now, if you reduce that by charging it up to about 80%, it's not going to count as a cycle and effectively allows you to extend the life of that battery by just a bit. But Justin, why don't you run through some more specific numbers or an example to help us kind of like clear this up?
Yeah, so really the question is, how do you actually only charge to 80%, right? Now, there's a couple things you need to understand so you know if you're at 80%, 50%, 100%. And that is each battery has a capacity that they put in terms of amp hours. So that's your battery's capacity. How many, if it's a car, how many gallons in the car? Amp hours. So an example would be the Aventon Level 3 we just reviewed, right? That has a battery capacity of 20 amp hours. Next thing you need to understand is your charger, how fast that will charge. In the case of the Aventon Level 3, it's a 4 amp charger. So it does 4 amps per hour into a 20 amp hour battery. Let's test Mike's math. How many hours is it going to take to charge? From zero.
One more time. Let me dust off my public school math skills. But one more time.
We're going back 40 years. So 20 amp hour battery, 4 amp charger. Assuming the bike's at zero, how long does it take to charge to 100%?
5 hours.
Yes. So you just take 20 divided by 4, 5 hours total, right? So if you have to do some basic math, but let's say your bike is down to 20%, right? And you want to get it to that 60% charge. So you're going to take 60 times 20 amp hours, which gives you 12 amp hours that you got to fill into the tank. So 12 amp hours, then you divide it by 4, that's going to be 3 hours. All right, so yes, there's some math here, but once you get that down, and we'll probably put this in the forum or on a post that kind of shows you some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get to know your battery, you just kind of get that down. So now you know you have to charge your battery for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So the tip is to go by one of these. So this is a timer outlet where you can plug it in to the outlet, plug your bike in, and then on ours it's just my countdown, and you can select 3 hours, plug in your bike, walk away. That way you know once it hits about that 80%, this is actually going to turn off and your bike is only charged to 80%.
And this is not anything bike specific. This is just like a general timer for,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, you can get one specifically for outdoor, you can get indoor.
Sure.
This is the one that we just got on Amazon. We'll
Okay.
put some links to some that we recommend. And honestly, side note, we would love to see other brands start to incorporate this into their system. That would be really cool.
That being a part of like a BMS or something would
Yes,
be great. Yeah.
it'd be really awesome. For me, I actually have these kind of set up with zip ties at my house and the bike racks to where I can keep everything off the ground, plug them in, dial it in, walk away and just go. And again, I'm extending the life of my battery. How much? That's 20%, 50%. I'm not exactly sure, but the point is it extends it longer, which is always a good thing.
And it's probably worth clarifying that if I'm listening to this and I'm like, I'm not doing all that math, that's crazy. Then at the end of the day, if I'm still charging to 100%, I'm not shortening the life from that charge cycle life, right? I'm not.
Correct.
It's going to still, in theory, meet its charge cycle's life that it's supposed to. This is just if you want to extend beyond that, the ways to do it. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
cool.
And then just the final note is if you are storing the bike over winter or something like that, you are going to want to keep it within that 20 to 80% range. And so you're going to want to go check it because over time, that battery will slowly drain, even if it's not plugged in, even if you're not using it. So just go check your bike frequently and just maintain that, again, 20 to 80%, and your battery will be healthy and it will last a long time. Okay, so for this next section, we want to talk about e-bike laws in California. Now, to be clear, they didn't just pass something new, but California did change their law at the beginning of the year. So last September, they passed a bill that kind of changed things up a little bit. So we want to just go into that and give some of our take on that. Again, we haven't talked about it on the channel. We haven't talked about it. I mean, podcast just started, so we haven't talked about it yet. And I also want to dive in a little bit into some of the ramifications for some of the brands that we work with. So with that being said, Mike, why don't you kind of paint the background and give us the backstory of what, has been going on in California?
Sure. So this has kind of been a 10-year process up until this point. So back in 2015, e-bikes were around, but they weren't nearly as popular. And so in an effort just to have some sort of documented regulation, they adopted AB 1096, which back in 2015 at the time pretty much adopted what we now refer to as the People for Bikes e-bike classification. So class 1 meaning pedal assist only, no throttle, up to 20 miles an hour. Class 2 being a throttle up to 20 miles an hour. And class 3 being pedal assist up to 28 miles an hour.
And people would actually, I get this question a lot. So I want to just interject really fast, is you end up with a lot of bikes that are class 2/class 3.
And that's a point of a lot of confusion.
Yeah. So what that, you'll have a lot of bikes that you can throttle up to 20, but then to go any faster, you have to pedal, and then you can pedal assist up to 28. And so you have those 3 classifications. A bike might be class 1. It might be just class 2, which kind of incorporates class 1 because you can pedal up to 20 or throttle up to 20. And then you can have a bike that is just class 3, does not have a throttle, like Specialized does, like their Vados, right? And so it is just a class 3. You then can turn around like the Rad City and have a throttle to 20 that also pedals to 28. So that's what we would call a class 2/class 3.
To be fair, is probably the lion's share of like the direct-to-consumer e-bike markets. They all have those, not all, but many have that feature.
Yes, and frankly, if you're commuting, that's generally what I like to recommend because that class 3 speed is nice to get up and be able to kind of hang with traffic a little bit more. I think it's a little safer. And the throttle actually is kind of nice if you're at a stoplight and you need to get off the line really quickly. And so I personally don't have a problem with class 2/class 3 bikes when ridden appropriately. And so that's where California was when they passed this law.
Correct. And so at 2015, I think that was good for the e-bike industry at the time. And I think it fit for the most part. The problem was in 2020, up until about 2023, starting with 2020 though, specifically in COVID, lockdown, stimulus checks, everybody at home, everybody looking to do something fitness related, everybody went and bought bikes. Specifically, a lot of e-bikes were sold during this period. So now all of a sudden we went from a few e-bikes on the road to tons of e-bikes on the road. And what happened is They started seeing a big increase of accidents and injuries. One source I found in Orange County said that they were reporting a 500% increase, but then they also had things like fires were happening. Like they had some fires in San Francisco related to e-bike batteries in New York. And so there was enough incidents that they decided, okay, we got to get back at this and create something tighter. And what did they come up with that passed eventually in 2024?
Yeah, so in 2024, they passed, what was the law?
It's
number again?
the SB 1271.
There we go. That one, SB 1271. And so essentially what they did is they kind of redefined the three classes that, again, People for Bikes has done a ton of work going out and trying to get all the states
We should link
on the
that
same
below
board.
too, yeah.
We'll definitely link all this below. And California, again, I kind of understand it. My brother moved to Carlsbad kind of during COVID or right after COVID, and you went there and it was just like gangs of Rad Runner 2s everywhere. 13-year-olds zipping around on throttle, not knowing what the laws were on the roads. They'd like make a left-hand turn and you're like, you thought you were going to kill a kid, right?
In their defense, if I was a kid growing up with e-bikes, I would have absolutely been one of those kids.
I know, right? But again, so they already had legislation in place where they could have done some things. Because you also had like the Surons and the companies that were going beyond the 20 mile per hour on throttle,
Right.
beyond 28 miles per hour on pedal or on throttle. I mean, we've seen bikes that can go up to 40 miles an hour on throttle.
A lot of these are basically dirt bikes with pedals.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And as defined by the CPSC, you don't really have this distinction between electric dirt bike and e-bike. They kind of have, but it's still just a little murky. We definitely need some more things there, right? And so with all that backdrop, they came in, they defined a class 1 e-bike as the same. So it's pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour. Class 2 e-bike, the same, throttle assist up to 20 miles per hour. Where the change is class 3 e-bikes now have to only be pedal assist up to 28 miles per hour. So what that means is you cannot any longer in the state of California legally have a class 2/class 3 e-bike. So all these bikes that are coming with a throttle that gets you up to 20, and then you can pedal assist up to 28, they have said, no, we're not going there, and you cannot have a throttle on that bike. Now,
That's going to be touchy with a lot of people.
it's challenging. I think it's challenging from several perspectives. First of all, you have so many bikes already there that are now no longer legal, right? So how do you go backwards? What do they do there, right? You also have the problem of what are brands going to do that are selling a class 2/3 e-bike everywhere else, and
Right.
now in California they can't.
Right.
So there's some brands that I know are, when they ship it to like a IBD, so like your bike shop, they'll send it and the bike shop will basically set it up for California, right? If it's a class 3, they'll pull the throttle off. If it's class 2, they'll put the throttle on and they'll kind of customize it to that location. But it causes a problem because you have multiple SKUs. And if you have a SKU for just one state, it's really challenging, right? And so we're not sure what all the brands are going to be doing on this. But I think another big issue is they already had a law. So the main reason from what I'm hearing is they didn't want the Surons out. They didn't want kids out there throttling, going 30 plus miles per hour. I do think that there's some good things there where they made it to where you had to be a certain age to be riding, right? You have to have helmets. There were some safety things that they added, which I think are great. But I think the bigger problem is they just weren't enforcing the law that they already had.
Right.
So they took a law and they added it to a law that was already there and kind of complicated, muddying the waters. And I don't actually think that they help things out very much. You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to, if I've got a Rad City, for example, that I
Right.
bought in Utah and I take to California and I've got the throttle, like, I don't see how they're going to enforce that any easier than they were beforehand. Right?
I don't either. Yeah.
Like if I have a Suron and I'm throttling it around without pedals, that's super easy to enforce. It already was against the law. So why didn't they just enforce it?
I can't answer that. It's California. They're known for making laws before they figure them out.
Yeah, so I just think it's added a lot of confusion. The second thing that they've done that's kind of confusing is they took out the wording continuous rated on the wattage. It was continuous rated at 750 watts. So motors they have a continuous rating and then they have a peak rating.
So like when I refer to the nominal rating versus a peak rating.
Exactly.
Okay.
So a bike, most of these bikes, their nominal or continuous rating is 750 watts, right? You get like a big fat tire like the Aventon Adventure. You kind of need that wattage. But they'll peak above that at short periods of time when you're under load, when you're going up
Start
a hill.
From stop, right?
It definitely sometimes you kind of need it, right? So by taking out the word continuous from there, I think the intent was to make it to where, no, 750 watts the max. But I have a feeling, and again, this is just my personal opinion. I'm not a legal authority. I'm not a lawyer, but it kind of actually makes the law even more ambiguous to where they're still not defining the difference between continuous and max. And I think they're just kind of missing the mark there, creating more confusion. And again, my personal opinion is they're kind of missing what I think actually they should be regulating, which is speed.
Correct. Because if you look at it from a wattage standpoint, just for the sake of argument, if I get on a 750 watt bike and someone who's 350 pounds gets on the same bike and we both floor it, we're going to have different speeds and different riding outcomes because the bike can't perform the same under different weight and circumstances. So there's a lot of variables that affect this overall speed. And I think wattage was probably not the right one to go with.
Yeah. Wattage came out of like the early 2000s, right? Where somebody in the cycling industry, it might have been somebody associated without the cycling. Don't quote me on that. But basically they just said 1 horsepower is what an e-bike is. If it goes up to 1 horsepower, that's great. Now, I don't know if they strapped a horse to a bike and said, this is how fast you ride. But basically 1 horsepower is 750 watts. And I think it kind of came from like a cyclist perspective. Like, Mike, you cycle a lot. When you're doing a gravel race, what's the average wattage that you're putting into the pedals?
So my last race was a nominal. So my average power was 280. So I might peak it up to 900, but I also might spend some time at 120 holding a speed. But my average pace was 280 watts.
Yeah. So it kind of seems like they took that and were like, oh, 2-3 times your output is fine. They didn't want something that's going 10, 15 times your output, or 10 to 15 times your input, because then it's kind of more like a motorcycle, right? But it was just kind of arbitrarily pulled out and created. And I just see the industry being stuck on this wattage like concept instead of just saying, no, here's the speeds that the bike should go. Maybe we can have something around acceleration. Maybe we cap the throttle speed. If they don't want people throttling around at 20 miles per hour, fine. Maybe we make that 10 miles per hour. They did put in a scenario on the class 3 where you can go 3.7 miles per hour. Kind of like a cargo bike kind of exception.
Like a walk mode
type. Yeah, like a walk mode type thing. So maybe there's some conversation that can happen around there. But really, I think the cycling industry as a whole kind of discriminates against larger riders, right? Like I do all the hill tests for Electric Bike Report. I'm, between 180, 190 pounds. And Michael, when he's, he does a lot of the drone footage and the video footage for us on that. When he's pedaling up, he's 6'5", 220, 230. We are talking night and day different experiences climbing that hill. And there's several times where I'm up, I've gotten a drink, I'm sitting around, my helmet's off. I'm like just chilling, waiting for him for several minutes because he had to walk the bike up.
Sure.
Because he couldn't get it up there. And he's not out of shape or not fit. It's just you add that 50 pounds, it's a very different experience. And which is why I really do think that if they just focus on the speed limits, 20 miles per hour, max 28 class 3. I really like what People for Bikes has done with their framework. I just think that's a better solution because it gets more people on bikes. You get a 350 pound rider and they can't get up a hill. If they're dropping down to 2 miles per hour, they're walking up at that point. I don't think that's a good thing for the industry. I don't think that's good for people's health. I just want to see as many people get on a bike safely. And again, if you control for speed and maybe acceleration, I have no idea how to do that.
I think speed is probably the most logical because it's like cars right now. Cops can't walk around checking under the hood for what size engine you got. There's all sorts of different engines out there. Some cars are faster than others. We're expected to follow the rules of the road that we're on. So I think speed probably a much easier way to do this, but
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of you listeners that want to go above 28 miles per hour. You want to go fast. You want to just throttle and fly. But honestly, I think that's very problematic because people will get hurt and people that may not ride as well as you do are going to jump on and just go, right? Like, so I do think there is a limit. And where it's different than cars is in cars, yeah, like my Ram might be able to go 120 miles per hour and I have to control it. On an e-bike, you can actually set the limit because once you hit that speed, it's done. And if you make it to where bike companies can't just, oh, hold the up and down button, go into here, change 2 buttons, done. Now you're going 45 miles per hour. Like, I mean, that's kind of garbage too.
On one hand, the other hand, and I hear it in the comments a lot, and I think it's valid, is that, well, if I have my own, if I want to ride it in town, then yeah, I'll stick to the speed limit. If I want to go into public land, then I should be able to go crazy on it. And it's like, okay, I can see that side of it too, but we have to rely on everybody like following all the rules.
Rely on everybody following the rules.
Exactly.
I mean, here in St. George last year, I was talking to the chief of police. We had a gang of Suron teenagers. It was like 150 kids on a Suron that went down Main Street, went to the university here, and just tore the place up, right? And so I do think the enforcement part is hard. And that's where I think the more people push the limits, the more companies push the limits and don't follow what People for Bikes has set, the more laws like this in California that we're going to get. And I don't think that is good for the industry.
No.
And bottom line, for me, if you want to go over 28, absolutely do it. Just get an e-dirt bike, right? Like take off the cranks, take off the pedals. Because if you pedal strike going 35, 40 miles per hour, you're screwed.
Not to mention the number of people I see going 30 miles an hour on the path with no helmet. I mean, so there's some wild choices being made on these bikes. But I agree that some sort of way to whittle this down and get some sort of control is a good thing without getting so bogged down by tiny rules that don't make a lot of sense like we've seen here, that it can get more confusing than it needs to be.
And I have heard rumors that they're working on kind of adding some definitions where you have like an e-moped or an e-dirt bike different than an e-bike, which I think would be very helpful if the CPSC come out and do that. I think the bottom line is nobody wants to have to register and license their bike.
No, I don't.
Right? Like we don't want to have that here in the United States. That will completely shut down all class 3 bikes. We want to keep it where you don't have to buy a car. You can go buy a bike. You can commute. You can go have fun, put a smile on your face without having to pay for license, not having to pay for registration. So all of us, I think we need to do our part by not going too far. And brands, I mean, you notice we don't really review many brands that go above those.
That's by choice too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get emails every day asking us, hey, you want to review this one? It goes 40 miles per hour. It's awesome. And I know we get a lot of comments saying, hey, review these bikes. But our take from the people that we've talked to is the more we do that, the more that those get on the streets, the more laws like this in California happen, the less chance that you don't have to license and register your bike. I just don't think that's good.
Yeah, agreed.
So bottom line, we do think California it was just weird to add a law into a law when their issue is more enforcement. I think it does kind of muck up the industry a little bit. And I know it's causing some headaches with brands, so we'll see what happens. But I mean, that is kind of classic California. At least that's
I don't want to say it again, but yeah,
you know what I mean? A lot of great things about California, love it. But that can't happen. So that's kind of our take. We'd love to know your take. So leave in the comments. I know this is controversial.
Almost guarantee you people are
I
already
know,
like,
I get it. But we absolutely want to hear your comments, and we'll kind of respond to some of those next week after
sure.
you send them through.
We'll give you the greatest hits next week. All right, so this is the questions you guys give us. We get a lot of questions in the comments, and generally we can reply to them in the review if they're quick answers, but sometimes we get ones that deserve a little bit of a longer answer or some context. So that is where we got this week's questions from. So Justin, do you have the first ones?
Yep, first one. So Mike, you're going to answer this one.
All right.
So this comes from CryptKeep3R985, and this was a few days ago. He said, or she said, any recommendations on a quality mid-drive bike with a throttle? Around 2 to 2.5K, something that can be unlocked or is already class 3 or has an off-road setting like the Ride1Up Vorsa, which I'm debating between that and the Aventon Level 3. Any insight? Is the power noticeably bigger on the Vorsa? So a few questions in there.
Yeah, so I'll start with the big one, which is the mid-drive and a throttle, because that probably deserves the most context. So the reason why we don't see a lot of those come out right now, it's by design, because a mid-drive, if you give it a throttle and people are allowed to use it from 0 to 100% to go all the time, almost like a moped, it's going to chew up a drivetrain. So your chain rollers, pulleys, your cassettes, your chain rings, everything's going to get stressed and damaged, which is why generally speaking, the only mid-drives that we've gotten in, aside from that hay bike recently, don't even have throttles on them. It's not because they don't want you throttling it. It's just because they got to protect the drivetrain and the longevity of the bike in some way.
Yeah, and you kind of have to find the right gear with a throttle. Like
Right.
it's really weird, especially when you're climbing hills and you're trying to just throttle up it. Like if you're in too high of a gear, it's just like not going anywhere. And if it's too low, it just spins out and it puts wear on the drivetrain. Like the Hay Bike Alpha, it does have a mid drive, which is kind of cool.
I immediately first brought that up in my mind, but then I thought, well, not off road.
Well, yeah, it doesn't go off road,
Not an
but
off-road
also
mode,
the
yeah.
throttle is throttled down significantly.
Correct.
The throttle almost, I almost think you should take the throttle off the bike personally.
I would disagree because I do like the fact that it's got a throttle. They try to give you the best of both worlds. They want to give you a mid-drive and they want to give you a mid-drive with a throttle. The problem is that they give you full throttle, it's just going to chew up the bike. So they did a very limited throttle that could be used for like 15-mile-an-hour cruise control, but you can't use it from a start. You can't go to your top speed with it because, again, at this point in development, I just don't think it's feasible to do it without ruining the bike.
Yeah, maybe if they did a mid-drive with a belt drive, like a Carbon Gates belt drive, you could possibly
Like a single speed setup, right?
Yeah, and like an internal gear hub, or if it's not a single speed, maybe there, but we just haven't really seen much of that yet.
Yeah.
So, second part of the question, Aventon Level 3 versus the Vorsa for this person specifically.
So I would say the Level 3 is, first off, it's one of our favorite bikes in the office this year that got released. It's really well done. So I'm not going to say anything bad about the Level 3, but I would say at least maybe compare the Vorsa to the new Adventure 3 that's coming out, because the Adventure 3 is going to be a bit more Vorsa related, a bit more do-it-all, beefier, more power. With that said, you can still compare it to the Level 3 or the Adventure 3. I would say, as far as an off-road setting, though, the Ride1Up Vorsa, the Ride1Up Dirt, those are going to offer you the things that are going to give you that amplified extra bit of juice that you're not going to get in like typical Class 3 mode. They don't have that on Adventure right now, as far as I know, or the Level 3. So I would say if you really are stuck on wanting that bump and amperage from the controller and that little bit of extra juice off-road where it's legal in your area to do it, then definitely check out something like a Ride1Up, I would say.
Yeah, and again, just the asterisk that we got to stay. Make sure that if you are unlocking it, first of all, with Ride1Up, you have to call them, right?
Yeah, you have to, exactly. You have to contact them and then they give you access. It's not something you can just hit a code to do.
Yeah, so we like that. But again, ride that where it's legal. Don't take advantage of that, because otherwise, just like we talked in the last segment, it's going to put us back into more laws.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
okay,
Either way, though, you can't go wrong with those bikes. Those are all good
Correct.
bikes.
So what's next?
All right, so this next one is for you. It says, I was ready to buy the Turbo Levo comp, but then I found out that the S-Works is the only one that had 111 Newton meters of torque on the motor, so I canceled my order. Not paying that much to get a bike that has the same motor but was detuned, so Specialized could screw with the software and detune an $8,000 bike. I decided that since there's really nothing new in mountain e-bikes this year and the DJI is not sold in the US, I'm going to wait till next year, which is boring year because nothing new but higher prices. I would bet that some bike makers will go out of business this year, and it's their own fault. It really seems the European bike makers are doing a whole lot more than the bike companies here in the US. And that was from Larry Richelli 5 days ago.
So, Larry, that's actually a really great question and a really good point. I've actually heard a lot of that.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Where people were kind of irritated with Specialized, how you basically just have to pay for more power, right? And so I just wanted, like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I know, as I was looking at that, as Bryce, who he does a lot of mountain bike stuff for Electric Bike Report, right? He bought the highest end Levo just because he wanted that extra torque and the extra power output. So from a marketing standpoint, I get it.
For some, it will work.
Right?
For
Like,
many, it won't.
It's going to work for those people. It won't work for everyone. And to be honest, I would love to see it to where maybe they retroactively send an OTA update that
would be cool.
boosts the torque for everybody. But at the same time, brands are struggling. Brands are having a hard time surviving. Larry, you kind of indicated that. That is absolutely true. And so if you're wanting to get the top of the line, I think they're trying to take advantage of that and make an extra buck right now, which is tough. It's expensive. At $13,500, it's a lot. I will say, in the little bit of that I've ridden it, though, it's really fun.
I have not got the chance yet.
It's a ton of fun. DJI is not here. I've heard rumors they'll be here in a little bit. But the one point that I did want to make is yes, you are paying $8K for a motor that is technically tuned down, right? In some regards though, all motors can go above what they tune them to, and you're still getting over 100 newton meters of torque and over 650 watts of power on the entry level Levos.
What is that threshold of torque for the entry versus the S works at 111?
S works 111, 101. I think maybe double check me while I'm going. But so yes, you get a little bit less, but at the same time, you're still getting a lot more than you got on the last generation Levo, and that motor, up to this day, I think stands against all the other, even the new 100 newton meter plus bike motors. It was, so you're still going to get a really good motor.
Yeah, 101. Sorry.
Yeah, 101.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Good, I got the numbers right. So you are still getting a lot. I think if they didn't offer the 111, you'd be stoked about the 101 and wouldn't complain, but your complaint's very valid. And
it's valid.
I would love to see Specialized kind of roll that back. As far as bike makers going out of business, Revel announced that last week.
Yes.
Which
and they have
sucks.
some awesome bikes.
Really
too.
kind of cool boutique company from Colorado. We're hoping that doesn't happen more. Will it happen? Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
So, So again, great question, Larry. Wanted to point that out. Wish I could magic wand update your bike for you, but I can't.
Well, if you do get it, we'll do my bike too.
We'll do.
All right, so thank you to CryptKeeper985 and Larry for your guys' questions. Good questions, and we will look forward to seeing more that we'll be sharing with you guys as the weeks go on with this show. So if you have a comment or something you want us to chat about, drop it down below, and we will do our best to get back to you or maybe feature it in one of the episodes. And until the next show, Justin, you got anything?
I'm just getting ready for China. So
And
sorry, I hate to rub that in your face, but I'm really stoked about that.
I look forward to seeing the footage when it gets back. But until then, we'll see you guys on the next episode.